If your organization is ready to enhance cyber resilience, we have important insights for you. The Level Blue Futures Report 2024 sheds light on how rapid computing changes affect IT visibility. Our research reveals that while IT leaders see positive outcomes, 85% acknowledge increased risk. In this report, we identify the barriers to cyber resilience, the challenges impacting cybersecurity, and the business context that reveal operational issues. You'll also discover what's on the horizon and 5 essential steps for prioritizing cyber resilience. Get your complimentary copy of this crucial research today by visiting securityweekly.com/level blue. Cybersecurity simplified. Let's talk about something that's becoming increasingly important for enterprise companies worldwide: cyber risk management. Traditionally, cyber risk has been managed manually in silos, separate from the business's core operations. The future is about getting real-time risk insights benchmarked against your industry peers through automation. And CyberSaint's CyberStrong platform is leading the charge. CyberStrong is not just another point solution. It's a revolutionary platform. It's a quantified top-down risk approach where your unique cyber risks inform C-suite decision-making to identify your top 5 cyber risks and the controls to mitigate them. Sign up for your free cyber risk analysis by visiting securityweekly.com/cybersaint. Do your end users always, and I mean always without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1Password. That's the number 1 password. Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque. All right, Jason, we're going to get into some articles this week. There's some really interesting ones, like this first article around insurance firm introduces liability coverage for CISOs. And we were just talking about this a little bit on the last segment about, you know, the personal liability stuff that the CISOs face. It was just really interesting that it's Crum and Foster now offers CISO liability insurance.
Yeah, I mean, it made me chuckle when I first read it because leave it to insurance, you know, to find the white space on where they can start charging people, you know, more premiums. So, it made me chuckle there. But at the same time, you know, knowing that not a lot of CISOs are on D&O policies,
I know,
it makes sense, right? So now, you know, these insurance organizations, this one in particular, and it's probably going to start spreading, and can go in front of corporations and say, listen, you have D&O insurance, but do you have any type of insurance for your chief information security officer? And how do we fold them into this? So, yeah, I think number one, it's a sales tactic where they saw white space, but at the end of the day, it's protecting the CISO. So,
yeah. So broad liability coverage. Key parts of Crum and Foster's new CISO liability insurance program includes comprehensive professional coverage, including CISO consulting services for the organization and through pro bono work. The coverage includes claims stemming from arrest, indictments, and other criminal proceedings and protections as regulatory pressures grow, all without a deductible.
Yeah. All right.
Sounds pretty interesting. If I'm a CISO and I'm not covered on D&O, I'm like, sign me up, baby.
That's it. Sign me up. As long as I can read the fine print.
Right.
What's that list of exclusions? That's what I want to see.
Right. And again, yeah, I mean, again, if we're signing off on something, you never know. But I think this is long overdue. We've been talking about this for well over a year since some of the original indictments came down to the CISOs. We've been, you know, we talked about this and advocated around these protections for CISOs. So I'm glad to see finally some coverage out there.
Anything that can force the conversation to happen, whether it's getting them on the D&O or having their own type of coverage, I'm all for it.
Yep, me too. The second article is literally just, the 2024 CISO Forum Virtual Summit took place on the 13th of November. All sessions are now available to watch on demand. So if anybody wants to go out and sign up, you can watch all the sessions from that CISO virtual conference. This is more of a public service announcement for anybody who wants to dig in. But there's some really good
there's some really good sessions in
Yeah,
here.
there's a list of the sessions. I was gonna say, go out there, check out the list of the sessions. All the sessions will be on demand, and they have some really good business type sessions for cybersecurity leaders, right? Navigating M&A, board meeting best practices. I mean, there's some really good stuff there, not just the technical. So, there's
Right.
really good sessions around aligned to the business.
Yeah. Yep. So any CISOs or aspiring CISOs, just some great content that I wanted to point out. This next one, Cloud Security Alliance issues comprehensive guidelines for auditing artificial intelligence systems beyond compliance. I love that word.
Yeah.
So I pulled this thing down, Jason, right? So I pulled it down. And one of the first things I love, so on page 21, it says the role of data, and it kind of does this data mapping. But what I love is they actually laid out about a dozen AI risks that you should try to manage against. So again, if we're managing cyber as a risk discipline, what are the AI risks I should look at? And this document lays them out, and I love it.
When I saw the list of articles and I drove a little deeper, I actually downloaded, there was an article before it that kind of set up this best practice, this assessment best practice. Then it was that article. First thing I did was I forwarded it to my risk team. I said, hey, listen, let's start taking a really deep look at this on how we can help our clients manage risk when it comes to AI. Let's get ahead of this, right? Because it is a risk management framework for artificial intelligence, right? And it's beautiful. It gives you key metrics to evaluate these AI systems. It talks about, trustworthiness of systems beyond the regulation. It's really, really good. So I already have my team digging deep.
Yeah, and it gives you in the appendices, it gives you like the questions to
assessment
ask.
Questions, yeah.
It gives you all the assessment questions across all these different domains that they lay out. So again, if you're trying to figure out how to manage your AI risks, this document's like 101 pages, by the way. It gives you the questions to ask to start to frame the conversations. And they've already laid out, like I said, like a dozen risk scenarios for AI that you can address. So I thought this was a super helpful document. Yeah.
Absolutely awesome. Like I said, the first thing I thought of was how can we be helping our clients who need help, right? So let's take that, because this type of an assessment, these questions will help seed deeper conversations, right? To help the businesses move forward.
Yep. Yeah. It's a great guide. First HBR article, hiring and recruitment, critical skill when interviewing executives. Now this one's talking about how to interview for decision-making capabilities. And when you get into the article, and I know you had some troubles getting into the article, 25% of the time decision-making is overlooked during the interview process, but it's one of those key skills that you want to understand for an executive. And we're not trying to figure out how people make some of these decisions.
Right. No, it's critical for, especially when you're hiring in the leadership side, because the last thing you want, the old adage, analysis paralysis, right? Where someone has a problem in front of them and they sit there and just overanalyze and it takes forever to make a decision. Some of the skill sets that, us as leaders have to have, and it's more often than not, is quick decision making. How can we make quick, intelligent decisions to move the business forward, so we're not paralyzed, so we're not stagnant? It's a necessary skill to have for executives.
Yeah, and then this article then flips it and talks about organizational decision making and how it's the breaking point for many leaders. So HBR ran a survey and said 63% of senior executives have either resigned from a prior job or considered doing so as a direct result of frustration with the organization's decision making skill. I know this firsthand because I've done this multiple times in my career. I have. I've actually decided to move from jobs because the organization's lack of making decisions or poor decision making led me to believe we were going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And so it's such an important thing to understand, both from a leadership perspective, but from an organizational perspective. How do these align? Because if you don't have good alignment, it's going to be really challenging for an executive to succeed in certain organizations. And I think it's just,
yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? And I'd love to pick your brain a little bit just about, what were those red flags for you, right? Was it micromanagement all the way up from the top? Was it, executives who weren't empowered to make decisions? What were those red flags? Because, as listeners, I'm sure they would love to be able to hear some red flags that cued you into, wait a minute, I think we have an executive team or a leader here who's not going to be really good at making some quick, intelligent decisions.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple, and that it aligns into the next article a little bit, right? You have to understand that every organization is kind of a little different, right? I work primarily in startups, mostly. I've worked for a couple kind of transitional companies, right? But I love the startup world. One of the things that will kill a startup faster than anything else is indecisiveness.
Yep.
So you will go out and you set a strategy, and you know that strategy is going to require you to make some hard decisions on other parts of the business, and then you don't execute on them. That's a tell sign that you're not ready to make the commitment on the changes needed to succeed and survive, right? And so I have examples in my career where we were the CEO was not willing to make the hard decisions on part of the business to actually accelerate where our strategy needed us to go. You can't serve two masters as a startup. Right. It's almost impossible, right, Jason, right? And so when you see that kind of indecisiveness or the lack to make those decisions, you know that the organization's going to struggle. Right. Others are just sometimes it's investment priorities. I think I've told the RSA story a few times. When I left Archer back in 2014, I talked to Art Coviello, and Art's like, I don't want you to go. And I said, I know, but I have to, because I know what you're going to do. I know where the business priorities are. The business priorities were around NetWitness at the time. That's where the investment was going. I was brought in to try to fix a product line that wasn't going to get a lot of investment. I can't stay in that environment. Like, I can't succeed, Jason, if I know that the direction's over here. I'm not part of that direction. Like, why would I stay? Right. Instead, I went to Tenable and did a lot of great things over there from a strategic perspective. So those are the things you have to kind of understand and navigate, because that's the kind of decision making that you want to see, and then know whether it aligns to
and
what
to be
you want to do.
100% candid, I think those same red flags hold true for even the non-startups in established business, right? Because if you're a leader and you're indecisive and trying to focus in too many different areas, and you're not putting focus in your strengths, I think that could kill, decision making and indecisiveness and quick decisions, because you're kind of scatterbrained, right?
Right.
Where you're trying to cast a wide net, and you're not putting. It's kind of like, with operational things. If you try to focus on too many things, you're not going to do any of them well.
Correct.
Right. So it's the same idea with transforming or innovating a business, where if you try to be too many things to too many people, you're not going to do anything well.
Yeah. And leaders have to make hard decisions, Jason, at the end of the day. And if they can't, it's not good for the longevity of the organization. And that's where I've seen most of the challenges of my career, is sometimes not making those decisions. Having been in the CEO role, we knew exactly what we needed to do to execute. And we did. We stayed very focused at Security Weekly. We kind of drove that through the acquisition. Like, we knew exactly what we needed to do. Paul and I were very aligned, and that was a great environment to be in. But sometimes when you don't control that environment, it can be challenging.
Yeah. Agreed.
For sure. Yeah. So this next HBR article, it's actually a podcast. The transcript's in there. I listened to it, actually. How to navigate a leadership transition. So this kind of ties into the previous article a little bit, and a little bit about what I was describing is that you have these different types of organizations. So they use this concept called STARS framework. So you have a startup, a turnaround, accelerated growth, realignment, and sustaining success. In each type of organization, when they go through a leadership transition, requires a different level of communication, team structure, etc. And so you have to understand what you're walking into as a leader to understand how to manage the transition appropriately.
Yeah, 100%. And I would even say it works the other way around, right? Because if you're on an executive team, you need to know what new executives you're hiring in, right? Are they a transformational type leader? Right. That when you're in that transformation zone, are you hiring the right leader inbound as well? So I love the dichotomy of the employee and the employer, you really have to make sure there's a synergy there. And you
Right.
both have to be in that same zone, right? That same spot.
You do. And that's when I go through an interview process. Like before I came to CyberSane, I interviewed with multiple companies. I had to look for that alignment, Jason, right? Because I knew what I was walking into here. I knew what I could do when I came to CyberSane. Some of the other organizations, I'm like, am I as fully aligned there or not? And it has to go into your decision-making process as an individual as well. And you want to see, the company's looking for that alignment on the other side too, by the way.
Right.
So understanding this stuff is very important when it comes to executive hiring. Has the cybersecurity workforce peaked?
It's funny, read the article, and it's kind of the back and forth between Ira Winkler, right, and ISC squared, and I mean we've probably seen it back and forth, and I always try to put myself in the shoes of both sides, right, and I almost see they're not aligned with what they're trying to say. So I related it to there's the shall and the should, right? And Ira's looking at it from the shall. It's the open demand, the jobs that are budgeted for, the open requisitions that are out there. How many jobs are you seeing on Indeed, right? And then you look at ISC squared and their kind of response back, and they're looking at it from the should. This is what we should have out in the industry, the nirvana, the need. What should we have out there in the world to make sure we're optimal in securing our businesses? And that's the nirvana. So there's kind of this butting of the heads of the shall, what's out there right now, in the should, the nirvana of what should be.
Right. And I agree. But the challenge is if the shall doesn't, I think what we're seeing now is, I'm not going to hire that position. I don't need to hire these positions. Even though I should have it, it should be out there. I should have this many people. They're making that conscious decision. I think what Ira's trying to point out is you're almost overinflating these numbers a little bit because the number of jobs out there do not align to what you think the workforce should be. And at the end of the day, companies are going to make this decision. What I thought was really interesting is we peaked in 2023.
Absolutely.
We peaked. And we're starting... globally, we're flatlining. In North America, we're actually declining, Jason.
Yeah.
Right?
The rubber meets the road at the shall. It's all about the demand. It's all about what's available. I mean, how does ISC Square even quantify what nirvana is?
Yeah.
How do you quantify what nirvana is?
A percentage of what? Right? I mean, if you look at all the layoffs that have happened in the tech field and into the cybersecurity industry, like, I don't even know how you could calculate those numbers anymore of what it should be.
Exactly. I mean, Ira's response is dead on. It's all about the demand. The market's going to dictate. At the end of the day, it's all about the demand.
And demand is down.
At 100%.
It's down. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
It is
demand is down.
Yep.
Maybe we did flatline. I don't know. Maybe a growth in the next few years will change that. But I mean, when I look at the numbers, we've peaked.
Yeah. And we can only hope that it's cyclical and we're in, we went through a downturn and eventually it's going to go back up.
Yeah.
That's what we can hope for,
so.
right?
Yeah. That's what we can hope for. All right. One communication article this week. Let's see. Effective communication for better productivity. I always love articles like this because I do try to figure out the best way to drive productivity changes. Yeah. It's interesting. Again, as a startup, Jason, you want them get the most out of your team, but you have to do it in the right way, right? Because I'm not a big fear, uncertainty, and doubt kind of person. But as a startup, you're always in this critical position of if you don't grow fast enough, you don't get the right funding, you could be out of business. You could, absolutely could. That's the risk and the reward of startups, right? Sometimes they survive, sometimes they don't. So how do you balance that with your team? Like, how much do you tell them about what's going on to get them motivated to build product fast? Like it's always in this interesting balance. So articles like this
I would argue, Matt, that communication is even more important in the startup world, because here's the thing. Larger companies can alleviate some of the risk with process. They've been around long enough. They could build process and standard operating procedures and policies and guidelines to really lay it all out. But when you're a startup, those things don't even exist yet. So communication needs to be the foundation, because that's what's going to strengthen your team from, that's what's going to make them successful. That's what's going to make them make great decisions. That communication, it's going to alleviate frustration. It's going to alleviate the unknown. So communication is so much more important as you're a smaller organization trying to build, as you start building best practice and policy and standard operating procedures.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. And again, you want to build that trust with your team, but you don't want to use it from a fear perspective.
Right.
But And like I said, it's always a delicate balance, because
100%. And that's why step 5 is learn and repeat. Right. So learn what's going on, build some best practice out of it, and then repeat the best practice.
Yeah. 28 years of security career and counting.
I love it.
Jason, thank you for joining me. Always a pleasure. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. Next week is Thanksgiving, so don't miss our Vault segment, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks on Business Security Weekly.